All right, so sitting down for another athlete story today. Joining me is Riley Cooks. Riley, thank you for joining me. Like I said before, I know that it's sunny out there in California, and I got you inside to talk to me for a little bit. But let's at least hope we have some fun here. So let's start out like anyone else. Tell us about yourself. What's your background? Tell us about your family, and what made you want to become an athlete.
Okay, sounds good. Yes, thank you for having me. I am out here in sunny California, but happy to be here and join the Athletes podcast. About me, I am from California, up near Yosemite National Park. Grew up in the mountains, was a multi-sport athlete there at Yosemite High School. I played soccer, volleyball, and ran track for 1 year, actually. And so when I was in high school, of course, wanted to continue competing at a higher level. Got recruited to play a little bit of volleyball back east. It's a little cold out there for me, a little far from home. So I decided to go to junior college, actually, and play volleyball there and give track, a little more effort and trying to stick with that. My goal was to continue playing volleyball, but track was really just kind of there to keep me in shape. And then now here I am, I don't even know, 8 years later, still running track, competing professionally. Moved down to San Diego to train. That's a lot of background.
It's a lot of background.
My family, I have, a lot of athletes in my family. Older brother that played football at Nevada. Very supportive parents who traveled around the world to watch me compete. And
that's always a plus, right?
Yeah, definitely. It's been great. And they also have helped a lot financially because in track and field, especially trying to run post-collegiately, it's not the most lucrative business, but
yeah,
they've been able to help a lot with that as well.
So let's start from the early years.
Okay.
You said that you were an athlete in high school, but any athletics growing up? Did you play soccer as a young athlete? Any other sports that you were involved in?
Yeah, I think I tried a little bit of everything. Growing up, probably before high school, soccer was probably my favorite sport. I was, pretty fast, obviously. That's why it worked out for me. So playing soccer, I don't know if I was the most skilled at soccer, but I definitely outrun everybody. So that made it fun. I played a little bit of softball, did, even some karate growing up. What else? Kind of dipped my toes into everything. Like I said, my parents were just wanted me to try everything and then just stick with what I enjoyed.
Yeah. Did they, my dad, he was a wrestler and football player and was like, hey, you're going to go and try this. I played this. I know about this. You're going to go try and do this, right? Were your parents that type of parent that said, I know about this. I enjoyed this. I think you would enjoy this too. Or were they just like, what do you want to do? You want to play piano? You want to do karate? What do you want to do?
Yeah, a little bit of both. They were definitely, again, supportive with whatever I wanted to do. My mom was a softball player growing up, so she really supported that. My dad, it's funny because he actually really wanted me to do track more than I wanted to at a younger age because it was a little bit too much running for me back then. But they were never, didn't push me too hard. Of course, they were just kind of like, whatever you're good at and whatever you enjoy, then that's, we support you in that. So.
Yeah. So as you continued, where did your competitive mindset come from? Did it come from, we've had people that have told us that came from a sibling rivalry where they had a sibling that, they were competing with, I guess at the dinner table, essentially. Was that your style? I know you said you had a brother that played for Nevada. Were you guys supportive of each other, or were you more butting heads and trying to outdo each other?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, and he's actually, 10 years older than me, I think. So I think I just grew up in a family and in a environment that really supported that, enjoyed that, grew up going to his games, going to even my older family member cousins and, other family members' games where it was just, everybody was always like, we're giving this our all, we want to win. And that was just, I think, the environment I grew up in. I've just always been, I would say, pretty competitive. I mean, you have to be, of course, especially in track because it's just you out there.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think just the people I was surrounded with, the environment. I don't know that we were necessarily butting heads too hard, but there's a lot of support, and like, if you're gonna do something, you got to give it your all. You got to try to win. That's what makes it
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah. Now, as you kind of got a little older, I have a sibling that is 8.5 years older than me. That's my closest sibling to me in age. Was he starting to train with you? Obviously, you're running track and you're playing softball. Were you guys starting to train together as you got older? Was he trying to pass on some hard work, college style wisdom?
Yeah, absolutely. And so the oldest brother, I actually have two brothers, but the oldest one, he's the one who played football. He's very, even more than me, very just motivated, driven, like, and if we were in a workout together, like, he's busting, he's doing everything, he's giving it his all. So I definitely think, there would be times where he would come to my workouts, practices, and it's the same with my parents too. It was always again, like just a feeling of, you need to just give it your all. And I would say that is something that grew in me as I got older. Like I said, I didn't love running. I wouldn't even say I necessarily loved working out when I was younger. I just wanted to play and have fun and compete. But of course, there's a layer of having to give it your all. And I think that they definitely built that up in me.
Yeah, that's great. Now,
Yeah.
as you continue to get a little bit older, you see a lot of athletes and coaches that want you to centralize, be a one sport athlete, focus on soccer. When you're not playing soccer for the school, you're playing for a club team, you're playing for a travel team, whatever else it is. Was that something that you saw? And, you said you played 3 sports. Did you have coaches or anyone else that was trying to get you to centralize?
To think about that a little bit. Honestly, well, it's kind of funny because growing up in the mountains up in Yosemite, athletics actually wasn't that big there. Of course, we had, decent teams, coaches that cared, but I would say comparatively to the biggest city next to me was Fresno, and a lot of girls, people who really were super serious about one sport, would often travel to Fresno to do to do club sports there, to just central, like you said, just specialize in one event. But overall, I would say, surprisingly, I wasn't pushed too much into one sport. Like I said, my parents were supportive of everything that I wanted to do. I definitely considered it when I was probably a junior in high school about, okay, if I'm really serious about volleyball, like, what do I need to do that? But at the end of the day, I just decided I'm good at both these sports. I love both these sports. I'm going to play soccer and volleyball all through high school. Did the club teams there. And then track, again, was just like, I'm going to do this to stay in shape. So I would say I stayed pretty well-rounded all the way up through high school.
Yeah. Now, were you kind of mentioned it a little bit of, if I want to do this on the next level, I should probably start focusing on it a little bit more. Was that a thought for you a lot, where you were like, I want to get to the next level. This is what I want, and when you were thinking about those things, was college on your mind?
Yeah, definitely. And that's where a lot of those thoughts came from. As I was a junior, senior in high school, I started to realize, like, okay, there are these people who are specializing in one sport. So what is that going to look like for me moving on to the next level? And like I said, up in the mountains, the sports wasn't, most people weren't playing at the next level. Truthfully, I grew up in it's pretty small towns, so I don't know that there was a ton of guidance for that. And that's another reason that just led to me just kind of doing everything, and eventually led to me playing at a junior college, because I wasn't really getting recruited out of Yosemite high school, to be honest. So yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah, it certainly does. There's many ways to kind of look at that, right? Like, you knew what you wanted to do, but you weren't really surrounded by people that were doing it on the next level outside of your brother, who played at Nevada. And I'm sure he probably didn't really did he centralize at all? Like, he was probably a multi-sport athlete as well.
He was a multi-sport, pretty into football, and he actually ended up going to Fresno City College. So we both kind of took that same route, and kind of had kind of had to take those steps
Mm-hmm.
to a slightly bigger level to get to the next level, because just like I said, the area that we grew up in, it was just, sports were just an extra on top of, school and everything.
Yeah. Now, mentioning school, how did you balance being a multi-sport athlete with school?
That's a good question. Back then it just seemed, especially in high school, it just seemed just easy, I guess. It definitely took up a lot of time. As I transitioned into college, it was really just learning curve, just kind of had to figure it out. There were still a lot of resources at the junior college level for helping with that. But truthfully, overall school, it kind of just, I didn't necessarily struggle in school. So I don't know. I think I just kind of found that balance naturally, to be honest. I think I was
Yeah.
one of the lucky ones. And I feel like I did go to high school. I graduated high school in 2012. So that was right at the edge of, social media really taking off, iPhones, everything. So there was still, I almost feel like I had more free time back then than a lot of kids do now with, as many as distractions as there are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's for sure. There's a lot more distractions
Yeah,
now.
it's
than
really
there
interesting
ever
to think
were.
about, because I was just right on the edge of that. And I'm like, I feel like high school would have been so different compared to now,
Yeah, that is for sure. So what led you to going to a junior college? Was it volleyball? Was it, lack of resources? Meaning, lack of people surrounding you, telling you that you could go to the next level? What was it that made you go to a junior college before anywhere else?
Yeah, just a number of things. Like I said, it's funny, I actually worked with a recruiting service my must have been my senior year, for volleyball. One of those things where they put together a little tape for you and send it out. So that was how I ended up kind of getting a little bit of recruitment out to the East Coast. But like I said, that was just a little bit far for me. It's a lot of D3-ish schools, so they couldn't really offer
Mm-hmm.
scholarships. I didn't want to go that far. Money, my parents were like, we're not gonna, unless you get a scholarship, there's just no reason to
Yeah.
pay, and which I understood. So junior college just made the most sense for me. And I also recognized that it would, having seen my brother go through junior college and him then in turn going D1, I was like, okay, I can still improve, get recruited, get maybe a little more looks out of, the junior college system. And it
Mm-hmm.
worked out for me in the
Yeah.
long run.
So athletically, when was it that track and field became your sport as somebody who wanted to play volleyball for most of your life?
Yeah, I would say probably after my freshman year of college. I played volleyball at Cuesta, which is in San Luis Obispo, California. Walked onto the track team, kind of had this mindset of, okay, I'm going to stay in shape. My parents are really supportive of me doing sports. So I was like, I don't really have to work as much if I'm still doing a sport and pursuing an athletic career. And then so after my freshman year of college, that's when I took on the heptathlon, which is my track and field event.
Mm-hmm.
Had no idea what it was. The coaches were like, we just think that you would do really well in this. Once I did that, so I ended up going to the junior college state championships for California my freshman year, placed well there, got second. And then after that, it was kind of clear, okay, this is something that you're actually pretty good at. You're probably it's going to be a lot easier to get recruited, especially on track and field, because they don't have to see you. They just need to see your numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would say that's when I started having to wrap my head around the fact that, okay, I think I might actually be doing track and field at the next level, and it was also new to me at the same time that it was really enjoyable still. I know a lot of people who ran track since they were 7 years old, and by the time they get to college, they're kind of burned out on it. So it was nice for me to have a new kind of exciting adventure in the sport too.
Yeah. So is that when you gave up volleyball?
Yeah, so I played one more season at Cuesta. And then, I guess, started getting recruited for track, and I was like, okay, time to kind of transition. But it's funny because I actually just signed up for my first adult rec volleyball league. So it's coming full circle. Like now I'm finally getting back to play. It's like it's my first love. So I'm
Yeah.
excited for that.
So when those calls start coming, the flyers start to get sent to your mailbox, how do you handle it, and who is calling you?
In terms of recruiting,
Yeah.
I'm saying, um, well, and it's actually funny because I did run 1 year in high school, my sophomore year, and I started getting, like you said, those things coming in the mailbox, and I was just like, at that point, I was like, I'm not trying to run track in college. I was like, it's just the high school track coach he was a tough guy, and it was a very strict training regimen. So I think that kind of turned me off. I was like, I don't know, I don't really want to do all that. So at that point, I kind of put a pin in it. And then when I was in college, I'm trying to think, like, the coaches definitely helped me. They all saw my potential. So, they had some connects at the next level. So, I was grateful to have them to ask more questions, and like I said, the transition with the junior college, it really did help because it gave me a little more time. I was a little bit older, a little bit of better idea of like what college was like, what living on your own was like. So I was grateful to have them to ask questions, to help me, to connect me to coaches. So I think I ended up going to Long Beach. I don't know if I already said that, but I actually met the Long Beach coach my freshman year at the state championships. So then that was kind of my first time at talking to coaches, talking about taking visits. I just kind of rolled with it. I was like, cool, like this is what this new process is going to look like.
Yeah. How many other schools did you look at that point?
Not many, actually. I was looking at, I wanted to study film production.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of narrowed it down a lot. I was like, okay, I felt pretty confident that that's the field I wanted to go with. So I took visits to maybe 2 or 3 other schools. I think I visited Northridge. I visited UC Santa Barbara. I had contact with Sac State, I think Arizona, but I knew I wanted to stay in California, and I knew I wanted to study film. So that kind of, like I said, narrowed it down. And I honestly, when I went to Long Beach, I kind of fell in love. I love the beach. So once I went there, I was mentally pretty set on it. I didn't sign with them for a little bit, but yeah, kind of where I was at.
Yeah. So competition wise, once you knew you were going there, what did your training regimen look like? How much did life change once you had a school and a new atmosphere set in your sights?
Mm-hmm. It was a big change. For starters, I went there in the fall, 2014, I believe. And previously at Cuesta, I had been playing volleyball in the fall and then going out to track in the spring. So I stepped on campus in the fall, and it was like, we're getting to work, like fall training, not doing events, just running, training, lifting, 6 a.m. weights, going to class, all those things. So it was definitely an adjustment. I remember my first couple of weeks at Long Beach really, really questioning if it was worth it to me, if I, wanted to live the true Division I student athlete lifestyle. So there was definitely an adjustment period.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get it. So with that new lifestyle, on being on campus, new life and everything else, how did you adjust and fight through those thoughts of, is this what I really want to do?
Yeah, well, I kind of always have had a mindset of just like, be patient. Things are going to work out. I think I've pretty much always had a fairly positive outlook on life in general. Obviously those things go up and down, but at the time, like I said, I was going through it, and luckily I was surrounded by people who had also gone through it, big track team. So I did my best to kind of just take it day by day, talk to those around me, call my family, call the people that support me, and truthfully, eventually it just kind of passed once I got into my rhythm. I was like, just had to have that confidence in myself that I could handle it. And eventually, as most athletes do, we figured it out and made it work. So,
how far are you from home at this point?
In Long Beach, gosh, my parents were still living up near Seminole, so about 5 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
5 hour
close,
drive.
not close enough to like take a drive and everything else is just far enough away.
Just far enough away that it was like, you're not taking too many weekend trips up there,
Yeah. So did you get homesick at all?
A little bit. Yeah, absolutely. I think everybody probably does. But again, with that transition period in between, when I went to Cuesta, I went with a lot of my friends as well. So that gave me, that time to get used to living on my own, but not really being alone. So then once I went to, Long Beach, it was again another transition, but I was a little more comfortable living on my own. But yeah, absolutely got homesick. But I also love Long Beach. It was hard to be too sad there by the beach.
Yeah. And I mean, as college athletes, we kind of have built-in friends, right? Where you're forced to meet people. So it makes it a little bit easier.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And, did you find that having teammates helped you to kind of regulate your schedule and really figure out what your new lifestyle was going to look like?
Yeah, definitely. And especially in the multi-event training. So in track teams, you have the different events. So you kind of get your close-knit little group as well as the big group. But yeah, I was lucky enough to, start training with a girl who ended up being is still one of my closest friends. A lot of people on the track team that I'm still friends with. So absolutely, definitely felt like I had a close-knit community pretty early on. And I think Long Beach did a really good job of emphasizing that in the beginning, as, this is your family now. These are the people you need to ask for help, for, understanding like what this is going to look like.
Academically, you said in high school, it was just seamless. Like you just were a student athlete. What was it like as a college student athlete? Was it a hard learning curve with now you're, obviously just studying your major, you're just, doing your major. So was it a tough learning curve for you?
A little bit. Yeah, it was definitely different. Again, going to the next level for your university, much more requirements, figuring out, timing with training and everything. And then once I got into my major, working on film, I would say in retrospect, that was probably one of the harder pieces, was kind of, excelling in that program. I think a lot of film students, just in general, it's a very grueling thing to be successful in. You have to spend a lot of time making, on top of your coursework. If you're really trying to get a job in the film industry when you graduate, you have to be making your own content and, just working internships and, being a student athlete, I really just didn't have time to do that. So yeah, I would say there was a little bit of like, no, I don't want to say I did the bare minimum, but it definitely was a challenge to, recognize that I wasn't able to do as much as I might have wanted to if I was just a student at the school.
Yeah. Yeah, that's tough. Did you have anyone on your team that was in your same major, or were you kind of, the lonely one on the team studying?
Yeah, I didn't. And I definitely felt like it was a little bit isolating in that the film aspect. I didn't have anybody. There's probably a couple other student athletes, but nobody from the track team. So like I said, it kind of felt like two different worlds essentially. And as I continued to get better and better at track, that's where my mind was at a lot of the time. So, I mean, I still did fine in school, got a college degree, but it was definitely a challenge.
Yeah,
making both work.
Now let's talk career a little bit. What are some of the college highlights for you from competing? And not only that, but your first competition, what did it feel like?
My first competition in college?
Yeah.
Well,
were you nervous?
Was I nervous?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do remember my first D1 indoor track meet was at NAU, I want to say. So yeah, definitely was, nervous. It was different. I was competing against way better people than me in junior college. But at the end of the day, it was all really fun too. So I didn't approach it, with too much stress. Like I said, back then, I was just kind of just going with it, and trying to enjoy it as much as possible. I ended up actually redshirting my junior year, or yeah, the first year that I was there. So it was my junior year. So I competed a little bit indoor, then I had a little bit more time, which was nice actually, gave me time to adjust more to
Mhm.
my life in Long Beach, without worrying too much about competing. Especially in track and field, once you take on a lot heavier training load, it can take some time to adjust to that. So it really gave me the time to kind of adjust, become a better athlete. In the next 2 years, went pretty well for me. I was All-American 2 years in a row, went to the NCAA championships, Big West champion both years in the heptathlon. So yeah, a number of decent accolades back then. It ended up all being really fun. At the end of the
Yeah.
day, it was, yeah.
I mean, just honestly, just hearing heptathlon, I'm extremely tired just hearing it. So what's the training like for you as a heptathlete?
It's a lot. so so I don't know if you're familiar with heptathlon. It's over 2 days, 7 track events. Men do the decathlon, women do the heptathlon. So day one is 100-meter hurdles, high jump, shot put, and then the 200. And then the second day is long jump, javelin, and the 800. So, it's a running, jumping, throwing events. So just a lot, a lot of training. In college, I mean, because I've competed, professionally and in college, and every different coach has a different approach to the
Mhm.
training. In college, it was just, we were running, 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 running. I was doing the sprint workouts. Then I would go throw with the throwers. Then I would, 2 days a week, I'm jumping with the jumpers, so it was a lot of hours, but I put in a lot of hours into the
Yeah.
sport, definitely.
Was it I mean, obviously you had done this before, as a high school athlete and everything else, but once you got to that D1 level, was it what you expected or was it a lot harder?
Training wise, it was like, the difficulty of the workouts was significantly harder, I would say. But as you get older and just become a better athlete, you adjust as well. So it's hard mentally, probably was equally as hard at both points, but once I got older, they were definitely harder workouts. I think managing the time was tough, and just the exhaustion after training for hours every day. There's a lot of pieces that were really difficult, but again, it was always fun at the end of the day too. So kind of both. There were definitely days where I was like, I don't want to do this ever again. But you
It
get through
sounds
them.
like it's been fun. It sounds like no matter what, you've always reminded yourself that that it's fun.
Yeah.
Would you say that that's kind of your mindset when you approach being a professional athlete?
Yeah, I mean, it has to be. I think, there's definitely times where that's hasn't felt like the case, or I've just been ready to be over it. Last year, I was training to try and make the Tokyo Olympics. So then coming off of the COVID year and then going into that training, it's a lot. Training for the Olympics is a whole different game, and you have to be 100% fully invested. It has to just be your life. And, there's benefits to that. It was nice to not have to worry about anything else, but there were definitely plenty of days where I was like, this is tough. I hope this is worth it. But in retrospect, wouldn't change it. Still ended up being fun. So yes, I would say that is still my approach.
Yeah. Let's talk about that COVID year a little bit. And I've got, some of my friends are Olympic athletes, Olympic wrestlers, and
Hmm.
I've talked to them about that COVID year where they're getting ready to go. You're ramping up for Tokyo 2020, and then COVID happened. What does that do to your training? What's that do to your mindset? Because obviously your training is structured for you to peak at the right time, and then it just never happens. So what did you do? How did you handle that mentally and physically when that happened?
Yeah, it was crazy for everybody. And I think everybody, it affected everybody differently. Everybody handled it a little bit differently. For me, I trained with a coach 2 years out of college, so 2018, 2019. And then I moved down to San Diego to train at the Olympic Training Center. So, as I mentioned before, anytime you're training with a new coach or a new program, there's a learning curve, and there's, time, it takes time to adjust. So realistically, I got there down to San Diego in the end of 2019, and going into 2020, competed a little bit indoor before everything shut down. And truthfully, I just didn't feel ready. I felt like I was still adjusting. I was, trying to wrap my head around what full really training for the Olympics would look like, and training with a new coach, new training group. So realistically, it actually benefited me. It gave me a little bit more time to kind of step back, reevaluate, see what changes I needed to make if I really felt like I was going to try and make the Olympic team. Gave me a little more time to get in shape, to adjust to a much harder training regimen. So from that aspect, it helped. Now mentally, of course, it was rough for everybody. I actually was living on site at the training center at that time. And when everything shut down, it was like we're in dorm rooms, and they shut down the dining hall. They shut down we couldn't even go out on the track. Like, they were bringing us food to our little dorm room doors. So it was very, very isolating, weird. Felt like I immediately got out of shape. But of course, then once they postponed the Olympics, I was kind of like, okay, well, at least it's okay, like, that you're getting out of shape. So yeah, it was a lot. It still doesn't feel real sometimes.
Yeah. How did you handle that mental part of things? Like you said, you're in your dorm room, and you can't really, all the activity you're used to doing is now shut down. So, while getting out of shape is horrible, the mental aspect of that is even worse. How did you handle, the mental aspect of the training as well?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure if I handled it that well. I mean, I think everybody got a little bit, layer of depression. There was just, sitting around, just eating junk food all the time, just binging Ozark. And that was my show so I only stayed home or on site for, I think I made it 3 weeks. And then once it wasn't, clear that things were just going to pick back up, I came back here to my parents' house. And I was like, oh, I'll probably only be there for like maybe a month. Ended up being here for 3 months. But once I got to my parents' house, I kind of, reset, was like, okay, it's time to start. You've been laying around for 3 weeks. Like, this clearly isn't going away. So now you need to use this to your advantage, and, try and set some goals for yourself and figure out what you're going to do. So I made, lifting and running a much more of a priority in that time. And I was like, okay, I have plenty of time to get going. I got a part-time job working remotely. Luckily, I know a lot of people weren't lucky enough to be able to do that. So I kind of got back into a little bit of a routine. And I think that mentally helped me a lot and helped me prepare for the upcoming year. Once we, knew we were going to be able to start training again.
Mm-hmm. And for a lot of people, COVID was a time where everybody did a lot of resetting, a lot of learning. What did you take from that year of being off, essentially, where you're just training, where you figured you'd be competing, that you now implement in your training, with you, either mindset or regimen training? What did you learn, I guess, from COVID?
Yeah. Well, and, despite me saying like I didn't feel necessarily ready, losing that year of competition, regardless of if I was ready or not, I was 26 at that time, which in track years is really your prime. So to lose that competition season, it definitely affected me, and, made me realize you can't take this for granted. You only have a few more years left to compete. So I would say that was one of the positive takeaways. And mentally, it helped me going into the Olympic year to recognize, like, okay, if you want this, like, you got to give it your all. You only have a small window. So from that aspect, it definitely made me more appreciative of getting to compete. And I think all athletes felt that way.
Yeah.
After that.
So we've talked a little bit about your post-collegiate career, but, let's backtrack a little bit to when you're in college. When do you start to think about becoming a professional athlete? Is there some sort of epiphany of, this is something that I can do when I'm, when I leave college? Or did you just continue to compete because you felt like you could?
Yeah, I really didn't even consider it until the very kind of end of my senior year, competing right, conference championships, NCAAs. I really hadn't thought much about it until people started asking me if I was going to, kind of supporting me. I was good in college, but I mean, I of course was, people were asking if I'm going to run professionally, and then, good, but not like to the point, I wasn't winning NCAA. So I'm looking at all these people. I'm like, well, am I good enough to run professionally? I didn't really know. Um, and it's funny, I actually remember being at NCAA championships, and one of my competitors, we were talking, because at everybody, even though we're competitors, everybody's very supportive of everybody.
Mm-hmm.
We compete together a lot, so pretty friendly. And one girl asked me if I was gonna continue running after college, and I was like, I don't know. Like, I had set some goals, goal marks, and I was like, well, if I figured if I hit these goal marks, then I probably will try to keep going. But I didn't hit those goals. And she was like, well, she was like, you shouldn't base it on, you know, how you did. You should just base it on if you want to. And then that kind of stuck with me, honestly. So I took a few months off after college, after graduating, and yeah, after a few months, I was like, I miss it. I know I can get a lot better. I know I have potential. Why not? And my coach that I ended up working with after college, coach mentor, he had actually reached out to me around the same time and was kind of like, hey, if you're thinking about it, just let me know if you have any questions, like, what the process looks like. I'm here to help you. So I think having his support, and then just being in that mindset of, I want to try it. It's not going to hurt anything. Why not? And then I just went for it.
Yeah. So what does that process look like for you when, you make up your mind that you're going to become a professional athlete? What are the next steps? How does it all happen?
Yeah. So my first year out of college, it really was just, you pick, there's not really a roadmap for that. It's not like other
Yeah.
sports where you sign a contract. So I was really grateful to have him, and my coach at the time, Chris, he kind of was like, okay, well, we're just going to start training. I started training, I think at the end of, so that was 2017, I graduated. So I started training kind of later than I normally would. I gave myself enough time to just kind of reset after college. Started training, really just entered in a local meet to where I got a good enough mark to compete at the US championships. Competed at the US championships, unsponsored. I think I placed 8th that year in heptathlon. And then I ended up, scoring well enough, doing well enough that I was able to gain sponsorship with a company named Oiselle. It's a women's apparel brand. They support a lot of distance runners, track athletes. I was their first heptathlete that they signed. So, once that happened, then I was like, okay, then I started feeling like an actual professional athlete. I was like, okay, I got a little support, a little bit more visibility in the sport. So then I competed in 2019 for them. And then that was the year that I kind of started really getting more of the pro lifestyle. I traveled over to Italy to compete in a meet there, did well. I competed in France that year. And then I again went to the US championships. I think I got 5th or 6th. And I got selected for the US Pan American team. So I competed for Team USA down in Peru. So it was kind of just like a build up, as you continue to improve, you do well enough, they select you for teams, you compete at the US championships. The two main things the two goals for all pro track athletes is the Olympics, of course, and then the world championships. Haven't made either of those teams yet, but that's kind of the end game. And then once you get there, it's like, okay, now you're trying to win medals. So it's always just like trying to get to a higher level, essentially.
Yeah. That's really cool. Over that time, and like I said, I've talked to a number of Olympic athletes, and some of them that had never made a team that ended up making a team and go on to win gold. What's it like as you're progressing and as you're becoming more successful? Is there more sponsorship phone calls, more coaches calling, more teammates trying to recruit you? Are you going through kind of another recruiting process once you turn pro?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, when I so when I competed in 2019 overseas, I competed a little bit with, other heptathletes, and my current coach at the training center, he was there as well. So yeah, at the end of my 2019 year, he reached out to me and was kind of like, "Are you interested in coming to train at the training center?" At the when I initially I was like, "Oh, it's an Olympic year. I don't want to change coaches." But I spoke to my coach at the time, and he was like, once you get to the training center, everything's taken care of for you. Like all you have to do is train. So, because at the time I was having to still kind of work, I was substitute teaching, doing some coaching, just to be able to live and train at the same time. So yeah, there was a little bit of recruiting there, and then once I got to the training center, it was pretty cool because it kind of felt a little bit more like back in college where a lot more is taken care of for you. So that was positive. But after that, I would say not too much recruiting after that point. But even now, there's always the options to move coaches. You will definitely have people reaching out to you, like, if you're interested in training here, this is what we can do for you. So yeah, a little bit of recruiting throughout the whole process. Yeah.
Now you kind of glossed over it that, you were working as you were being a professional athlete.
Yeah.
How hard is it to balance that? You're trying to compete, but you're a substitute teacher. You're doing a job here. How hard is it to balance that?
It is hard. And I mean, first things first, you have to be okay with being broke because there's just not a lot of money in track and field. My parents were still supporting me at that time. They wanted to see me see it through. So they are helping me with rent, everything. Yeah. And just luckily the coach that I was working with, very flexible. He actually helped me with getting that substitute teaching job. So, and some of my coaching positions too. So it was, it took a village essentially, and support, and being able to work around a lot of different schedules, like training at different times, working, trying to pay my bills, all compared to when I got to the training center. It was just like, you wait, same day, same schedule training. But those 2 years, yeah, it was a lot. And I mean, it ended up paying off in the end, but I know a lot of really good track and field athletes that didn't necessarily have the opportunity to even try that because, how you're going to work and train, like it just doesn't work out for everybody, to be honest.
Yeah. So now like I said, as a pro, you don't really have, your schedule isn't coming out. You know what I mean? The ACC is not bringing out your schedule every year, right? So how do you work with your coach to pinpoint what competitions you're going to go to? I know you just said you had a competition, what was that, last week or the week before? Yeah. How do you pinpoint those competitions, where you're going to go, and how does your schedule get made?
It kind of depends on the year, and different money making opportunities too is a big piece of it. Once you get, to the level where you can go compete at different meets that offer different money, for how you place, for the multi specifically, there's a kind of a global challenge where you can go and compete at different meets, and then like your total score ranks you, and then there's world rankings, which different meets are worth different amount of ranking points. So you have to factor that in, and then you're factoring in your training and when you're trying to peak, like we talked about before. So there's a lot that goes into it, honestly, and just working around what works with your schedule. So it's a little bit different for everybody, and different years have been very different. 2019, like I said, I traveled overseas quite a bit, whereas last year I think I only went 1 year because traveling overseas takes a big toll on you. There's a lot of recovery that comes with that, and then trying to be prepared for the Olympic trials. So just a ton of factors go into figuring out when and where to compete, and make the most of it.
Yeah. So what when it comes to that schedule and picking out where you're going to go and how you're, when you want to peak and everything else, how much of that is your coach saying, we're going to go here? And how much is that is you saying, this is where I want to go?
I would say it's 75% coach driven. Of course, we're adults. It's a job. We're both working our job together. But so there's a lot of communication about it. But at the end of the day, he has a plan for your training, for your season. So I would say, I trust what he wants me to do and where I'm going to compete. So mostly comes on them planning it.
Yeah. So what's your schedule look like right now? And like, you just came off of a competition. What's next?
Yeah, well, it's crazy because I honestly decided to kind of take a step back this season. I ended up getting injured last year, so recovery took a little bit longer than I planned. I started a new job, so I've kind of been, figuring out what my next steps are in my athletic career. But yes, this last meet that I entered was kind of a little bit more for fun. I was just doing javelin and shot put, but I ended up having a big PR in the javelin and qualifying actually for US championships in the javelin alone. So this is going to be my first time. So now I'll be competing in June at US championships. And this will be my first time competing in an individual event as opposed to the heptathlon. So it's exciting.
Have you ever thought about just doing individual events instead of the heptathlon?
I mean, I definitely have thought about it.
Yeah.
I would have guessed hurdles is really one of my stronger events. I would have guessed that if I was going to do a single event, I would do hurdles. This javelin PR, it didn't come out of the blue, but it was definitely bigger than I expected. So now, yeah, I have a lot to contemplate now about what I want to do. So
Yeah.
I don't know. Stay tuned for that, I guess.
Yeah. When stuff like that happens, as a baseball player, sometimes you're just like, I knew I hit that one out, right? When you hit a new PR, did you feel it, or were you kind of surprised when you saw the result?
Oh no, I definitely knew. And I really went into this meet with, like I said, relaxed for fun. And I knew that there were some things that we had been working on. And I was like, okay, if I can just nail these couple things, the competition's gonna go well. And yes, on the one throw that was massive, I definitely knew it right as soon as it came out. So it was really exciting, a lot of fun. So
Yeah, I was gonna say, what's that feeling? Like I said, like as a, when you're a baseball player and you hit one and you connected right, it's just like it's just like a release of a feeling. Like
oh
what's
yeah.
that feeling like when you release that?
Oh yeah, it was crazy feeling. And when they actually announced the mark, I immediately started crying and ran and hugged my coach. Just especially coming off of last year, my training was going really well last year. I definitely felt confident in my chances to make the Olympic team. Ended up getting injured, had to deal with all that. So coming off of that, kind of wrapping around my head around, okay, am I done with this sport? So coming off of all that and then going into this, hitting a big PR, qualifying for nationals in javelin, it was very emotional day, very exciting day. Yeah, so there was a lot of
Yeah,
excitement after that.
a lot of emotions with that,
A
right?
lot of emotions, yeah.
Who are some of your training partners? Obviously, as an athlete in your respective sport and some others, you're the only one that's out there. But like, who are you training with? Who's pushing you? Where is a lot of the inspiration coming from with you?
I have great training partners. Both of I train with two other heptathletes, Erica Bogard and Annie Coons. They both made the Olympic team last year. And at the end of the day, I was heartbroken for myself, but we all support each other so much, push each other every day. Like we've seen each other's growth. So it was so exciting to see them make their first Olympic team. And then, just at the training center, surrounded by a lot of other really great track and field athletes, some big names, Will Clay, Brittany Reese, people that like I grew up, or not grew up, but when I was younger in the sport, hearing about, and then to be able to see them and see like the best of the best, like it's motivating every day. So I felt very lucky to have been able to be at the training center and be surrounded by, some of the best in the sport. It's pretty exciting.
Yeah. Now, as you look out, kind of 30,000 foot view at your entire career, and obviously you're still competing. A lot of the athletes that I speak to aren't still competing. So, but when you look back at, your career as a multi-sport athlete in high school, and then, the road that you've traveled, what's a piece of advice that somebody's either told you or something you've learned that you could tell the next generation that's coming behind you?
I think I mentioned a little bit earlier, but I would say probably it takes patience. so much of my career has just been unexpected, even just last week, like I just am like, still, it's hard to wrap my head around that. But especially coming off of just what felt so negative. But, I really just took the time to be like, you just got to be patient. You got to be patient with your training. You got to be patient with your progress. You got to be patient with your decisions. And I think in the long run, just trust that if you're putting in the work and you're being patient, things are going to pay off in the long run.
That's awesome. So when's the next competition? Where are we going to see you again next?
I'm figuring that out. I definitely will be at US Championships in the end of June. I'll probably throw one or two more times before then. But yeah, I haven't put anything in stone. Like I said, this last meet, I hadn't really planned beyond that. And so now I'm having to kind of think about that a little bit more and figure it out. So,
well, good luck. It was
so much.
a pleasure sitting here and listening to your story. And I'm now an even bigger fan. Going through and reading your bio and doing all the research. I'm like, man, I can't wait to hear about all these things. You don't really meet a heptathlete every day. Here where I'm from, Joey Kovacs is a big deal because he went to a high school here in my area. So
yeah.
So Joey's from right around here, and him and I actually used to go to the same strength coach. I never even spoke to him because I'm like, I'm gonna stay far away from this gorilla of a man and let him do his thing. But yeah, like he's a huge name around here. So, I've always wanted to kind of talk to him, but I never had a chance to. But, hearing kind of what you guys go through training wise and, as a thrower, as a runner, I mean, as a heptathlete, you're kind of an all around athlete. That's a big deal. I don't know how anyone handles that. And to hear your mindset and hear you just kind of like laugh through your accolades and just have fun with it. It's just like, man, that's a lot. Like I said, I'm tired just listening and seeing all of it. And so I don't know how you balance all of it.
It's a lot, but like I said, it ends up being fun in the long run. And believe me, there's been plenty of days where I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. But you get through it, be patient, and then, it works out.
That's awesome. Well, good luck. Like I said, it's been a pleasure. I really enjoy this entire conversation. I can't wait to watch you compete. Hopefully we'll be watching you at the next Olympics, whether you're throwing or jumping hurdles or anything else. But, hopefully it all pans out very well. And, good luck. Hopefully we see another PR here soon.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.